This is an excerpt from All Wars Are Bankers' Wars. You will hear a review of how Wall Street and the world bankers were building munitions in Nazi Germany right up into the beginning of the war, and how there was a complete plan to put the United States government under Nazi power. The Nazis were put in power by Wall Street, American corporations, and they were funding both sides of the war. The German trucks were built by Ford, the German tanks were built by Ford, and literally American manufacturing and money and corporate power was funding both sides of the war.
Winston Churchill writing in his book, The Second World War. Now, a little side note, we're going to actually step back in time to the years before World War II. A little bit of history a lot of Americans are still completely unaware of. And it involves a gentleman by the name of Marine Corps Major General Smedley Butler. In 1933, Wall Street bankers and financiers had bankrolled the successful rise to power of Hitler and Mussolini. Brown Brothers Harriman in New York, and they're still there. I saw them when I was there for the 9/11 anniversary. They were financing Hitler right up to the day war was declared with Germany. And these Wall Street financiers decided that a fascist dictator...
American corporations were funding Nazi Germany, and they built the railroads and the concentration camps all over Germany and Poland.
Dictatorship in the United States, based on the one Mussolini had in Italy, was going to be far better for their business interests than Roosevelt's New Deal, which threatened...
They were setting up a fascist government to take over the American government, and they selected one guy to be the leader in a coup against America.
Massive wealth redistribution to recapitalize the working and middle classes of America. So the Wall Street tycoons recruited General Butler to lead the overthrow of the U.S. government and install a Secretary of General Affairs who would be answerable to Wall Street and not the people, would crush social unrest and shut down all the labor unions. General Butler pretended to go along with the scheme, but then exposed the plot to Congress. So there
was an overall plan to actually shut down the entire U.S. government because United States corporations had built the Nazi war machine, and they wanted to put the American government under the Nazi power as well. They didn't care what kind of government was being run. They just wanted to increase their corporate powers.
They recruited Marine Corps Major General Smedley Butler to lead this coup d'etat because Butler was very popular with the soldiers, and his image as part of this move would help convince the military this was the right thing to do. Now, to his credit, Major General Smedley Butler, remembering his oath to the Constitution, pretended to go along with the scheme, but then exposed the plot to the United States Congress. Congress, then as now in the pocket of Wall Street bankers, refused to act. When Roosevelt learned of the planned coup, he demanded the arrest of the plotters.
Okay, so Smedley Butler exposed the fact that corporations were about to shut down the United States government and turn it into a fascist government, but Congress and the president did not do anything about putting those people in jail, and the corporate heads went free.
But the plotters simply reminded Roosevelt that if any one of them were sent to prison, their friends on Wall Street would deliberately collapse the still fragile U.S. economy and blame Roosevelt for it. So Roosevelt was unable to do anything about this attempted coup d'etat until the start of World War II, at which time he prosecuted many of the plotters under the Trading with the Enemy Act. Now, mostly it was glossed over. Oh, it's just a rumor, unfounded, it's wacko conspiracy theory. But in 1967, the congressional minutes of Smedley Butler's revelation to Congress of the coup were finally released to the public. You ever see this movie, 7 Days in May, Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster, about an attempted military takeover of the United States of America? It was based loosely on this story. But of course, in the movie, the bankers being behind the Burt Lancaster character was completely removed from the script here. Now, Smedley Butler is also famous for writing a work called War is a Racket, and I would like to read you a quote from that. Quote, I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service as a member of our country's most agile military force, the Marine Corps. I served in all commissioned ranks from second lieutenant to major general. And during that period, I spent more of my time being a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, and for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I suspected I was just part of a racket at the time. Now I'm sure of it. Like all members of the military profession, I never had an original thought until after I left the service. My mental faculties remained in suspended animation while I obeyed the orders of the higher-ups. This is typical with everyone in the military service. Thus, I helped make Mexico and especially Tampico safe for America.
A mind in suspended animation. And I'm telling you, that is what I felt in the churches when I was a young person. I knew that there was something very, very wrong. In the first 300 years, there was no allowance to have anything to do with border disputes or killing people or even being a policeman enforcing the laws of the unbelieving countries and lands. You were not allowed to enforce the laws of a worldly government. You were called to be a family that is the most serving and kind and godly and heavenly family in the neighborhood until they kill you or drive you out of your home. You are not allowed to be involved in military service, in government office, or anything to do with defending borders or killing whatsoever, ever at all. So it is wise for you to completely renounce anything to do with the structures of governments and war, military service, policing, and the things that defend borders. In the Garden of Eden, there were no borders, and in eternity, there will be no borders. If a family needs to travel to see a loved one, there should not be a bunch of walls and guns up for people traveling. Will there be in the world? Of course. But Jesus' disciples are to have nothing to do with those rules. So if you are part of a church who believes in border disputes and policing and military service and high government position, then you should renounce those things and be safe in your homes with your children. If you don't renounce those things, the evil will increase and dark spirits will get license and the Holy Spirit will be grieved and set apart. Smedley Butler.
For American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped in the raping of half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. The record of racketeering is long. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers in 1909 through 1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for American sugar interests in 1916. In China in 1927, I helped see to it that the Standard Oil went its way unmolested. During those years, I had, as the boys in the back room would say, a swell racket. I was rewarded with honors, medals, and promotion. Looking back on it, I feel I might have given Al Capone a few hints. The best he could do was operate his racket in 3 city districts. I operated on 3 continents. General Smedley Butler, former U.S. Marine Corps Commandant, and he wrote that in 1935. So, now moving forward here. As
Smedley Butler speaks.